You know, I just don't see how I made that assumption that you think I made. That the United States is incapable of committing an atrocity against itself. Um, you know, I probably look like a crazy dumb person. But I assure you that I realize that the only superpower in the world is capable of committing atrocities against itself as well as others. I mean, it has the physical capability of doing that. So I think we can stipulate to that point. I guess you might be inclined to think that I don't have the assumption that we could attack ourselves if you're committed to the conclusion that the United States was implicated in some conspiratorial fashion in 9/11. You see, one of the reasons why I don't accept the 9/11 conspiracy theory because one of its other false premises, it seems to me, is that it required that the United States government required an attack on the home territory in order to get public opinion behind an attack on Afghanistan and Iraq. Now, people who say that really just do not have a good sense of American history, particularly in the 20th century. When we started getting involved in Vietnam and escalating our involvement there, the United States populace was opposed to it. They didn't stop the government from doing it. When the Reagan administration was getting involved in dirty war in Nicaragua, the United States people were opposed to getting involved militarily in Nicaragua. But that didn't stop them. If I can remember this correctly, given all the fog of revisionist history that's gone on lately, right before we invaded Iraq, poll after poll in the United States indicated the American people weren't in favor of invading Iraq. Now, once we did and got involved, then of course, people came on board for a while. Um, but initially, they were opposed to it. But that didn't stop the Bush administration from attacking Iraq. I mean, to show that we didn't need planes slamming into our buildings in order to engage in further military operations, the American people were opposed to our continuing presence and occupation in Iraq right now. And what is the current administration going to do? Well, what they're going to do is they're going to escalate our involvement. They call it surge. Now, to be sure, most governments, the United States being no exception, would like to have popular will behind them when they do get involved in military actions, but it's not necessary, generally speaking, particularly in the United States of America. The Democrats, for example, recently won back Congress on their opposition to the war, primarily. But are they going to stop funding for this war? Well, no. They've said no. They're not going to do that. So, you see, even when you have a party that has a position of opposition, they're not really going to oppose it in any realistic and fruitful way. That's not the history of the United States of America. We didn't need 9/11 to attack Afghanistan, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Iraq. We didn't need it. So yeah, I think we're capable of it. I just don't believe there's any reason to think that the United States of America needed to attack itself to accomplish whatever military, strategic, or economic goals it might have in the Middle East. The other assumption that you seem to promote with favor is that, or you offered with some approval apparently, the assumption that it requires a state to pull off something as complex and intricate as 9/11. You know, I've heard this now since 2001 about how difficult 9/11 was. And I feel like I'm the guy that looks at the emperor and says, you know, I don't see the clothing. I don't get the so-called complexity of the 9/11 plot on my theory carried out by Al-Qaeda. It's not difficult to get on the web and find out flight times and coordinate them. It's not difficult to study and figure out how long it takes a plane to get somewhere, so you can have some fairly rough timing. It's not particularly difficult for people to take a flight school, go to flight school for a certain period, just long enough to get up in the air and fly a plane into a building, and then just learn that much. How to turn the I think it was the transponder off so you can't be tracked. That's not difficult. That's pretty simple. And you know something else is simple? Going into a store and buying box cutters. Very simple. Very easily done. And sneaking them onto a plane. Also easily done. Well, as a matter of fact, remember after 9/11, and they put all those measures in to make sure nothing like that happens again. Remember the man that, just to prove to his wife that you could sneak a gun on the plane, snuck a gun on the plane, and told everybody afterwards, look what I did, I snuck a gun on the plane. He almost got in trouble for that. Not difficult. None of it was difficult. There was a lot of planning that went on by Al-Qaeda, yes, and for perfectly obvious reasons. Al-Qaeda is funded based on its success, not its failure. Al-Qaeda studied this again and again and again, made sure they had all their ducks in a row, so that when they pulled this off, that it would be successful. So, the amount of time that they took on this has nothing to do with the complexity of the plan itself. As a matter of fact, I suspect that one of the reasons why the plan was difficult to detect was precisely because it was so simple. How do you check on people buying box cutters? That's probably impossible to do. So, I don't have the assumption that the United States, to review, I don't have the assumption the United States couldn't attack itself. I just think it didn't in this particular case. And I see no reason to think so. Nor do I accept the theory that only a state, whether the United States or Pakistan, as you mentioned, or some other government, could pull off 9/11. There's no evidence for that either.